Hello and welcome to this very special Christmas themed ArtCAM Express 2013 demonstration. In this demonstration, I'm just going to show you using the basic version of ArtCAM Express with no modules installed, and I'm going to create this Christmas plaque that you can see on the screen here. And here you can see the finished piece that I'm going to be producing. So the first thing that I'm going to do in order to create this is to create the vector or the lines for the snowflakes. So the way that I do this is I'm going to just use a picture to do this, or an image. And here you can see that I've got this image here. If I just zoom in, you can see that it's really low resolution and it's very pixelated, but I'm going to still use this in order to create lines in ArtCAM, because I don't want to create this design from scratch. So I'm just going to grab that and drag it into ArtCAM. And this is going to open up the image. It's going to ask me to set the model size. Now, all that I need to do for this is just turn the height in Z to 0. Okay, so that's opened up the image for me. Now, if I zoom in, you can see that it's really badly pixelated, and also there are lots of different colours within this image, even though it's just a black and white image. If you take a look down the bottom on the colour palette, you can see I've got lots of shades of blacks, of greys, and also of whites in there. Now what I need to do is bring this down into 2 colours preferably, in order for ArtCAM to use one of those colours, which it will trace around and give me the lines or the vectors for this piece. So the way that I can do that is by using the bitmap to vector tool. So if I select that, and I'm going to select to reduce colours. Now I'll just move that out of the way so you can see here. And I'm going to bring that down. Now you'll notice down the bottom, the colour palette, all of the colours start to wash into black and white, and also within the image on the screen. So if I start to bring that down until it gets to 2 colours, you can see it's now just a black and a white image. Now I'm going to select the black colour that I'm going to trace around, and I'm going to select create vectors. Now if I drop the contrast slider bar down, you can see that it's given me these really nice lines, and it's not following all of the pixelation from the low resolution image. So what I'm going to do is just use that now. I'm going to delete the inside vector, and you can see that I've got this vector here that I can use for my snowflake. So because I'm using the basic version of ArtCAM Express, I don't have any modules installed. What I need to do with this is to export this out. If I did have the vector tools module, I could assign this to a different layer, but what I need to do is go to vectors and then to export that out. And I can export this out as an EPS or a DXF file. Here you can see one that I created earlier, this snowflake. So I'm just going to save over the top of that. And then I'm just going to close the model, just so you can see on the right hand side that I have no modules installed, and I'm just using the basic version of ArtCAM Express. So what I'm going to do now with my snowflake vectors saved is to start creating my design. So if I go to new model, I'm going to set this as 600 by 600 with a thickness of 25mm. I could select to work in inches or millimeters. I can change the origin or the datum to be the bottom left, top right, bottom right, or the center, just by clicking on that sheet here. I can also change the material Z0 to the top, or the model position to the top, or the machine bed. I'm just going to OK that. This will open up a blank model for me. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just start designing all of the vector artwork for my plaque that I'm going to create. So the first thing that I'm going to do is create a square. This is going to be 550 millimeters by 550 millimeters, and I can create that, and I'll just center that in the model. Now that I've done that, I'm going to create a circle. I'm going to snap to the top left hand corner. I'm going to do this 75 millimeters radius and click create. Now if I wanted to copy that, all I need to do is press Control on the keyboard with the circle selected, and then when I get the snap cursor like so for the center, I can just drag and then drop and snap onto that side. I could do the same again with both of those, or I could mirror the vectors. So if I select both of those, and I'm going to go over the model. So with those vectors created, I just need to trim all of the pieces off that I don't need. So if I select the trim tool, and I'm going to trim off the inside edges of the square first of all, and then I'm going to trim off the outside circles like so. And then if I click on each of these, you can see they're all individual parts, so I need to join all of these together. So if I select all of those and then hold the mouse button down over this icon here, it gives me a flyout menu, and I can select join vectors. So if I select that, it says to me that the number of vectors that I have now is 8, and the number of vectors afterwards is going to be 1. So if I select join, that will now turn that into one vector. Now what I can do is create a frame for this. So I'm going to offset this vector here. I'm not going to delete the original vectors. I'm going to select the resulting offset though, and I'm going to do this 10 millimeters. I'm going to go in 10 millimeters, and I'm going to go in again 10 millimeters, and then I can close that. So there you can see it's given me this sort of frame. Now what I'm going to do is create some text for the plaque. So if I select this tool here, this creates vector text for me. And if I select the drop down here, you can see all of the fonts that are available to ArtCAM. Now these are all the fonts that are installed within my Windows fonts folder. So you can see that they're all available to ArtCAM here. And I'm going to use this high tower text. And I'm going to give this a size of 15 millimeters, and I'm going to change the spacing to 0. And I'm just going to click anywhere on the screen, and I'm going to type in ArtCAM, and then select done, and then deselect the ArtCAM. I'm going to select the text again. This time I'm going to do 20 millimeters high, and I'm going to type in here wishes you, select done, create some more text, this time 25 millimeters. I'm going to type in a very merry, and then select done, create some more text. This time this is going to be 30 millimeters, and I'm going to type in here Christmas. Now you can see that the Christmas is a lot smaller than the line above, so what I'm going to do is select all of that, and I'm just going to change the spacing. Let's do it around about 60, let's say, and select done. Okay, so when that's created, what I'm going to do now is just center that horizontally, so it centers all of these to the Christmas. And what I'm going to do is just select the very merry, just move that up using the arrow keys, I'm going to move the wishes you down using the arrow keys and also the ArtCAM, like so. When I'm happy with that, select all of that and I'm going to centre that within the model. So there you can see all of my text that I've created. Now what I'm going to do is to import a 3D file to give me a bit of artwork within the plaque. Now the way that I can do this is go to the 3D view, as you can see here. I'm going to toggle off the material visibility, as I don't need that. And the way to import a 3D file into ArtCAM is to go to Reliefs and then import a 3D model. Now if you take a look at the drop down, you can see all of the 3D models that the basic version of ArtCAM Express can import. So we've got 3ds files, we've got STLs, OBJs, Rhino files. What I'm going to do is just select an STL file, which is this reindeer, and select open. And it gives me this paste 3D model dialog box. Now if I take a look at the sizes down the bottom, you can see that the X size is 3.684. So this is really small at the moment. So if I just zoom in on the bottom corner, you can see that I have my reindeer there. So you can see this is a fully 3D reindeer that I've imported. What I've done, I've just grabbed this from the internet from a free STL download. What I'm going to do is just get this in position and get it the right sort of size. So if I select center, that will move the model to the center of the block. And what I'm going to do is resize this. So let's try about 100mm in X. Now you'll notice that that's also changing the sizes in Y and Z. That's because they are both linked. So if I untick those, it will just change the size in one direction. And also I can do this by scale. So let's say for instance I wanted to put some shrinkage on a job. I could do that by selecting the percentage. So if I select apply and then zoom out, you can see that this has made this reindeer really large and it's just about the right size. If I press center again, what this does, it moves the bottommost point of the 3D model file onto the top of the 0 plane. And what I need to do now is get this in the right orientation. As you can see, it's standing up on the plaque. I want it to be lying on its side. So what I'm going to do is rotate the model about an axis. And I'm going to rotate the model about the x-axis. And I'm going to type in 90 degrees. And then select apply. You can see that that's tilted that up. And that's in the right orientation for me. Now if you take a look around here, you can see it's lying really high above the 0 plane. So if I just press center, it will bring the lowest point, which is the bottom of the ear here, down to the top of the 0 plane. So if I select center, you can see that that's brought that down. Now what I need to do is to move this upwards. So let's take a plan view of this, and I'm going to move this in Y. So let's change it from 300 to 400. Select apply. Now you can see it's still not high enough. So let's try 450 and apply. It's probably a little bit too much. Let's try 430 and apply. And there you can see that that's in the right position now. Now you can still see that it's sitting quite high above the job. Now the problem that I've got here is that ArtCAM is not a full 3D CAD modeler. It won't allow you to create undercuts like I have here. So if I was to paste this down now, it would bring all of the undercut sections down just straight. So you can see it's just bringing all of those sections down straight. So what I'm going to do is just reset that, and I'm just going to bring the reindeer down until the back legs here are just sticking through the 0 plane. So I'm going to bring it down, let's say -10, and apply. And you can see the ears just poking through the 0 plane. Let's try -20 and then apply. You can see that the back legs are going through the 0 plane there. So that looks okay. And what I can do now is to paste this down and then close. So you can see it's still brought the flats down where there are undercuts, but what I'm going to do is to just scale this down so it maintains the detail. I don't need it to be 40.5 millimeters high, which it is at the moment. So I'm going to scale this down to 5 millimeters and select apply. You can see that that's brought all of that relief down to 5 millimeters high. Now you can also see that there's a lot of jagged edges on this. So what I'm going to do is use a new tool within ArtCAM Express called the Smooth Relief tool. And what this will do, it will just smooth out the whole of the relief. So if I select apply, you can see that that's made that a lot smoother. And you can see I've got this cute little reindeer on my plaque now, which was a 3D file. Now what I'm going to do is to import a texture. So I'm going to take a plan view of this, and I want to import a texture for the main body of the plaque. Now I'm going to do this by going to Reliefs and selecting Import, and I'm going to choose, instead of a relief, I'm going to choose an image. So I'm going to choose this wood texture image, and I'm going to center that within the model. Now you can see that this encompasses the whole of the inside of the plaque, so I'm just going to leave that where that is. Let's give this a more rounded number, 0.5 millimeters, and let's just take a look at how this interacts with the reindeer that I just pasted down. As you can see, if I were to paste this down now, let's just paste that, you can see that it's losing the back legs on there. So what I'm going to do is undo that. So this is now floating clip art because it's in blue, and I'm going to scale up the reindeer. So let's try 7 millimeters and then select apply, and you can see now that I've got this leg just at the back here and also the front leg. So if I close that, transform the clip art, now I need to make sure that this is set to merge high rather than add. Merge high is what it will give me as it's showing now. So what I can do is just paste that down. So there you can see it's still giving me the detail for the back legs, and that's exactly what I wanted, and it's left me with the texture in the background. So if I take a plan view of this, what I'm going to do now is to import the snowflakes. So if I go to Vectors and Import, and I'm going to select the DXF file that we saved earlier. Now you can see that this is quite small at the moment, so what I'm going to do is transform this, and I'm going to make this, let's say, about 100 millimeters, and I'm just going to move this to the top left here. Now with this selected, I'm going to create a couple of copies, so just press Control on the keyboard, and I'm going to create a copy here, and I'm also going to create a copy here. So there you can see I've got 3 different snowflakes now. I'm also going to create another copy of this, and I'm going to go to Transform and I'm going to make this, let's say about half the size, let's say about 50. I'm just going to place that around about there, like so. I'm going to copy that up to about there, and I'm also going to copy that to around about there. Now the final thing that I need to do for the vector design is to offset this inside vector. Now the reason that I'm going to do this is because I'm going to basically be creating a pocket, not using area clearance, by using a 3D toolpath, even though I don't have a pocket here. So I'm going to explain how to do this in a moment, but what I need to do is to offset this vector, because the center of the tool actually goes to the boundary. So if I were to use this vector, I would have a shoulder going around the edge where the larger tool overshot the boundary, and this isn't what I want, because I want to create a pocket. So what I need to do is to offset this line inwards by half of the diameter of the tool. So let's say 6mm, because I'm going to use a 12mm end mill to rough this out. So let's offset that, and I'm also going to offset it again using a 0.75mm offset. So I'm going to be using a 1.5mm ball nose to finish the part. I'm going to delete the original vectors just so I don't get mixed up. So let's offset that. So there you can see I've just offset these two vectors. So what I'm going to do now is do some machining. So if I select toolpaths and then come down to create machine relief toolpath, this is just telling me that there are parts of the model that lie above the material block. Now I'm not going to adjust the material block settings just yet, because I'm going to set them up in a moment. Now the area to machine is going to be selected vectors, and I'm going to select the very inside vector. And instead of selecting a finishing option for this, I'm just going to use a roughing option, because I want them to be on two different toolpaths, because I need to use two different boundaries for this. So I'm going to use a 12mm end mill, click select. If I select the arrow here, this gives me the drop down accessing all of the parameters of that particular tool. I'm going to change the step down, let's change it to 2.5mm. And then I'm going to come down to the bottom, and I'm going to set up my material. Now the material that I'm using is 25mm thick. Okay, so that's the material, let's say, that I have on my imaginary CNC. So I've got 25mm thickness material on there. And what I'm going to do is to change the material thickness to 12mm. And I'm going to change the model position in the material to the bottom. So in effect, what this is going to do, it's going to give me 5mm on the top of this, and when I'm creating this roughing, it's going to go down 5mm until it touches the top of the reindeer, and then come down to the texture. So it's going to give me at least a 5mm pocket on the top of this, and it's saving me from having to create this in 3D. So if I select OK and just rotate around, probably be able to see this a lot better. So here you can see this is the top of my reindeer, and I've got this gap at the top here in my material. So ArtCAM automatically thinks that this is material on the top of here, and it's going to machine all of this and in effect create this pocket for me. So if I take a plan view of this and then select calculate now, this will create all of the roughing for this toolpath. So this will be a completely separate toolpath, and I'll have the finishing as another toolpath. So I can close that. Let's just open up the toolpath. I'm going to rename this to Machine Relief. Let's call this Roughing 12mm end mill. And I'm just going to simulate this so you can see. So this is creating this pocket. Okay, and let's just delete the simulation now. Now what I'm going to do is do the finishing. So I'm going to select the next vector that I have, create another machine relief, select a 1.5mm ball nose tool, make sure that I've got selected vectors selected as the area to machine, and I'm going to change this step over, let's say 0.3. Leave the material set up as it is and click calculate now. So there you can see that's created the toolpaths for the finishing. So if I now rename that, and I'm going to call this Machine Relief Finishing 1.5mm ball nose. And what I can do is simulate all of these toolpaths just so you can see this. So there you can see the roughing, and then it's coming along doing the finishing, and you can see it's leaving me with this pocket. So you can see I've got this nice pocket within here. I wouldn't be able to do that normally with leaving the 3D standing up. I would need to use a machine relief to do this. Okay, so there you can see my machine reliefs. So let's delete the simulation. What I'm going to do now is to create a V-bit carving for all of these pieces. So if I create a V-bit carving toolpath, and I'm going to first of all select a tool. So if I select a carving tool, I'm going to use this 32mm 120 degree V-bit. Click select. If I click refresh here, this will tell me the maximum depth that this tool is going to get to. Now, if I just turn on my material, you can see that the actual base plane of this is at the bottom of my material. So 6.383 is going to cut through the base of this. Now I'm not concerned about this because my material on my job is 25mm thick. I know that it's not going to cut through this. I'm just fooling ArtCAM into thinking that my material is only 12mm thick at the moment. So I'm not going to be concerned with that. Now the start depth is important. I need to hover over this texture, and if I take a look down the bottom right hand side where it gives me X, Y and Z coordinates, it will give me a rough size of the start depth for my V-bit carving. So I'm going to give it a start depth of let's say 11.35mm, and then select calculate now. Now this is giving me the warning that I was telling you about, saying the toolpath will cut through the material base. Do I want to continue? And I'm going to click yes, because in the next toolpath I'm going to change my material to the proper thickness, which is 25mm. So if I close that, I've got my V-bit carving here. Now what I'm going to do is create a groove that runs around the edge here. What I need to do now is reset my material, and I'm going to give this its proper depth of 25mm. So the way that I can do this groove is not using the V-bit carving, is by creating a profile toolpath. And I'm going to do this along the profile, and I'm going to give it a finish depth of 1mm, profiling tool, I'll use the same V bit that I just used, and I'm going to set up my material thickness again. So if I select setup, and I'm going to change the material thickness to 25mm, but this time the model position in the material is going to be at the top of the material, and select OK. And then I can select calculate now, and this will give me a 1mm groove on the top of this. Finally, what I'm going to do is cut the part out. So if I just turn off all of my toolpaths so you can see, I'm going to select the very outside profile and create a profile toolpath. This is already set to the outside, and it's got a finished depth of 25mm, which is the depth of my material. I'm going to set up a tool. Let's use the same 12mm end mill, and then calculate now, and that cuts the part out. Now what I can do is to simulate this, so let's simulate the roughing. So there you can see the roughing with the pocket left. Simulates the finishing for the machine relief. Simulates the V-bit carving, so creating the snowflakes and the text. Simulate the groove, just gone around the centre there, and then simulates cutting the part out. So there you can see that's cut the part out. So if I want to get rid of this waste material, just select simulation, delete waste material, just also delete this waste material to get rid of that. And I'm going to change the material from the default, and let's change it to medium oak horizontal, and apply. There you can see it gives me this nice wood effect. Okay, so finally, if I want to save these toolpaths to send to my machine, if I select toolpaths and then select save toolpaths, here you can see all of the toolpaths on the right hand side. If I didn't want to post any of these or convert them to my machine, I could just grab them, drop them over onto the left hand side, and they will not be converted. Just drag that back. I can also do this using the arrow keys. I can save toolpaths to separate files, so if I had a single headed machine, this would save each toolpath into individual files for me to send down individually to my machine. And I can also append the toolpath details to the file names if I like. I already know what most of these are, so I'm not going to bother doing that. Give this a file name. Let's just browse and let's just find my folder that I want to save this to. And I'm going to call this Christmas, and select open. The machine file format, now these are the post processors or the converters which convert toolpaths, which is the data from ArtCAM, into the code that your machine will read and will be able to cut the job. Now you can see we've got lots and lots of posts within here. There are well over 200 posts within here, so it's more than likely that your machine will be listed in here. We also have a generic G-code post, which is useful for a lot of the Chinese machines that are coming over now. So I'm going to select that. Now if you're curious about whether your post works for your machine or whether there is a post for your machine, if you download the trial version and go through the tutorials, this will allow you to machine the part, so you can select the post and then save it and make sure that it works on your machine prior to purchasing. So let's use the G code, select save, and this will save each of the toolpaths into my folder, as you can see here. Just select the last toolpath there, or the last G code, and you can see all of the code and this is ready to be sent to my machine. So that brings an end to the demonstration. I hope that you enjoyed it and found it useful, and I hope that you have a very Merry Christmas, and hopefully I'll see you in the new year. Goodbye.